All right, welcome back everyone to this series on logic. And if you're watching me from up north, some of you I know watch me all the way from up in Boston, up in New York. I hope you're keeping warm and you're not too snowed in. I know here in Virginia has actually been one of the most brutal winters that I can remember. It's not normal to have such low temperatures, but at least we sort of escaped the snow. No snow in this area. It's only January, but I'm already looking forward to spring. It's been a brutal sort of December and January have been quite cold. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of the cold. If it were up to me, we'd have even warmer. We'd have almost Charleston, South Carolina weather, or Savannah, Georgia weather. But alas, we cannot always choose. We cannot choose at all, actually, climate. But I'm glad I'm not in, some of those northeastern cities or Midwest that they get quite cold. But we're going to continue talking about. I never would have imagined, by the way, that this series, so many of you, it just dawned on me when I was reading the comments. So many of you have asked me to continue with this series, and I realized I said, well, actually, yeah, it makes sense because that is what a lot of our students are missing. You need logic. You need logic. You cannot do proper math if you do not have a logical foundation. And the lack of logic today in our schools really infects not just mathematics, which is already a tragedy, it's bad enough, but it also affects the thinking process of many, many young people in this country. There used to be courses called logic and rhetoric. Logic and rhetoric. In fact, even Columbia University, I don't know, I haven't kept up with them because there's been several things that I don't like happening on campus. But they used to have a course called Logic and Rhetoric, at least in my day, logic and rhetoric. And you had to know how to write properly, you had to know how to express your ideas properly. You could not get away. I will share with you actually one of my first papers at Columbia University, one of my first, and not papers, essays. And the instructor, who I admired him very much, he marked me down. Actually, he marked me. He gave me a C. Can you imagine? He gave me a C. He said, "This is not good writing," and that's how I learned to perfect. You learn through harsh methods. You learn to perfect your craft. And a lot of students, you don't have this foundation because today, a lot of instructors are just not doing that. A lot of them are not even reading papers. In fact, I found out recently, much to my dismay, that in some colleges, I'm not going to name which ones, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't happen at all. That there are some instructors that are using AI to grade. Can you imagine that? Using AI to grade. What a disservice. And then some of these instructors are the same ones who blast, with good reason, who blast students who use AI for their assignments. By the way, if you're using AI for math, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Don't be that person. Do you really think that those of us who are mathematicians and instructors, do you think we can't tell? Do you seriously believe that we cannot tell? I've heard all sorts of stories. The other day, actually, I'll give you something that happened. In one of my classes, the question was whether there was an integer, an even, I quote the exercise that I gave. I said, an even integer between two fractions that I gave. And there was actually no even integer between the fractions I gave. It was only an odd number. And guess what? There's always got to be someone who thinks that they're smarter than the rest or thinks they're not even smart. They think they're slick. They think we're not going to realize. And the person didn't even bother. That's how lazy they were. They didn't even bother to read what the awful thing that ChatGPT spat out. And ChatGPT literally said that in that particular problem, that the only I'm going to quote, even integer between those two fractions was 3. Seriously, is 3 an even number? You have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. And I literally, the student came up to my desk without batting an eyelid. And I tore up the paper. Because I'm one of those people even when you give me papers, I kind of, if there's time, I look over it. I tore up the paper, tore it to shreds in his face. And then, of course, I had a meeting privately with him. I didn't want to make a scene. I'm not one to make a scene. That's rude. But I spoke to him I organized some office hours, and I said, don't you ever, ever do that in my class again, because you do that in my class again, which is cheating, by the way, using AI without my permission. You do that in my class again, and I'm going to write you up. You're going to go on a record, and I'm going to push very hard for your expulsion from this school. Right? Don't be that person. Don't be stupid. Why would you waste your money, by the way? I mean, education is quite expensive, isn't it? And some of you, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars. Why couldn't you just, if you're going to spend so much money, just stay at home? Just ask ChatGPT to solve your life for you. And if you're depending on ChatGPT, I feel so sorry for you because you have no future. There is no future for you. If you really think that ChatGPT is going to help you in any way whatsoever to make you think, they may spit out the answer. So can a calculator, by the way. I know they exist. I know Desmos exist. You can literally plug in any equation into Desmos, and yeah, you get the correct answer. What's the point, though? What's the point? Why even bother to be in my class if you're going to cheat? Just think about it. Don't play those games with mathematicians because we will sniff you out. We will find out that you are not, because we know your math level. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And you think I'm not going to realize what your math level is? Everyone takes a level test in my class the moment they come in. The moment they come in. So anyway, so here is an if-then statement. If it stops raining by Saturday, and I hope some of you were taking notes, by the way, while I gave you that little speech. If it stops raining by Saturday, then I will go to the football game. So we have to tackle this, the ever humorous and yet deeply mathematical concept is called implication. So now, what if one of your friends made this proclamation? Under what conditions could you call them a liar? And if you take a hard look, well, if the rain does indeed stop, but your friend stays home and doesn't go to the game, well, congratulations, you've caught your friend in a fib. They're a liar, plain and simple. Easy, right? But wait for it. What if the rain does not stop? Ah, therein lies, we have implication there. That's the lesson of today, among other things. Your friend never, in this statement, never claimed to not go to the game if the rain doesn't stop. He just didn't promise to go if the rain did. It's a bit like the rules of good manners. What's not said can be just as important as what is. And whether your friend goes to the game or not, in that case, it's still all good, and he's technically not a liar, right? In that situation. Now, you might be tempted to offer alternative interpretations that feel. Nowadays, we hear a lot the word, we hear more I feel rather than I think. I hear a lot of young people say I feel, and it bothers me. Don't feel, think. Use your brain. I don't care about your feelings. I care about what your logics, what's behind your logical statements, what you're thinking about. You might be tempted then, right? Because if you feel that something else is plausible. But let's be crystal clear. Mathematicians, we have agreed on one thing, and that is that an implication is only false when the antecedent, the rain stopping in this case, is true. And the consequence, in this case, is the football game attendance, is false. So in any other case, we stick with the truth. It's just how we do things in the world of pure logic. We're clean, precise, and to the point, like a good, well-ordered argument in the halls of reason. So remember, in the world of math, if it's true, it's true. If it's false, well, that's when we have a problem. You can't just let it slide. Just like any well-bred person would never let an implication go unchecked. I spoke about that in my previous video about standing up for the truth, didn't I? I told you that if you are if you call yourself a neutral person, you're either very ignorant or you're a liar. There is no such thing as neutrality. The moment you do not defend truth in some way, you are in fact taking a position. Because especially when it's in the context of a moral question, right? If someone commits murder and you say, "Oh, I'm not going to take a position on that," well, you are taking a position technically, unless you're referring to the details of something. So let's see a little bit here. So this is what we call a conditional statement in math, and in logic also. In the logic course, it's an implication. So the if statement, you can call that P. We call that the antecedent. And the then statement, you can call that Q. That's called the consequent. So how would you decide on the appropriate truth table? We spoke about that previously. So I'm not that was in my previous video. I gave you an example of a truth table on that. But here are some problems that you can think about. You can let me know in the comment section what you think. It says identify the antecedent and the consequent in the following statements. Right, so I gave you three statements here, right? And then I also have, you can pause the video if you want to copy this. I'm not going to give you the answer, by the way, in the video. I need you to do a little bit of thinking, right? What I'm doing is I'm showing you I'm giving you the foundations, the information that you need. But I want you to be doing the thinking in terms of the answers. Now, some vocabulary here. You have something called an equivalence, and that is the statement P if and only if Q. We call that a conjunction of two implications, and I gave you the symbols. You should already be familiar with the symbol. Look at my previous video. You better be knowing these symbols. You have P implies Q and Q implies P. So that is what we call an equivalence. And you can denote it as I've listed here. I couldn't type it out exact symbol. I didn't have to, but it's basically, it looks like an arrow with on both ends. So you can also use, if you write it out, if, IFF, instead of if and only if. There was a gentleman, he pointed that out in a very good way in the previous comment section as well. So before we even create a truth table for equivalence, right? We said earlier, we got to talk about implication. We said that mathematicians have agreed that an implication will be called false only when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. So when you create a table, if you create a table of that, truth table, you would have something that looks like as follows. Right? Before we do this table, so we have P, Q, and then P implies Q. Well, if both are true, if both antecedent and consequent, then obviously true. If the first part is true, but the second part, the consequent, is false, then we have a falsehood. However, if it's false, but then the consequent is true, then we have truth. If both are false, interestingly enough, then the implication is true. So it's important to recognize when you're dealing with mathematical writing, the conditional statement can be, you can actually disguise it in what we call equivalent forms. So there are many ways that to say the same thing. If I told you if P, then Q, I can also say Q provided that P. Or if I told you P implies Q, I could say Q whenever P. If I said P only if Q, then I can also say that you can say it as P is a sufficient condition for Q. Or if I told you Q, if P, then Q is you can say Q is a necessary condition for P. Right? And then if we talk about antecedent, I put here a little table here. So take a look at this for a moment and analyze. If we analyze the compound statement, right? If P then Q and Q then P, we have to analyze it step by step. It is the conjunction of two implications here. And that is called an equivalence that we said earlier. Right? So here is the table that you can look at. Notice that it's interesting here, right? If you have P and Q as true, well, they're all true. But notice what happens in the second part. If P is true but Q is false, then that means the statement, as we said earlier, is false. P implies Q. But then Q implies P, however, is true. Be very careful with this, right? And then if we were to do P then Q and Q then P, then the statement is false. So I want you to study this table for a moment, and you can let me know if it makes sense to you in the comment section. All right, you notice that the equivalence here is true precisely when P and Q have the same truth values. If they have, so as in statement one, true and true, when it's false and false, they are true. Right? So that's something to think about. Now, I want you to construct a truth table. I'm going to give you, and now that you know the symbols, I want you to construct a truth table for the following compound statement. And I'm going to just write it out. I'm going to use the negation symbol, which we said looks like this. And we're going to say P and Q and then we have an equivalence symbol. And we're going to say the negation I want you to construct a truth table for that. I also want, actually, I want you to do more. I want you to construct a truth table for this one. For this one, we'll say this, P or Q. Again, actually, that looks like a triangle, not a P. All right, so I want you to construct truth tables. Pause the video, construct your truth tables, and then let me know what you're coming up with. All right, did you pause the video? You should have already done the exercises here. You notice, right? You should have noticed that each of the compound statements is true in all cases. In all cases. And that's called the tautology. And we're going to encounter that a lot in the next several lessons. They are very useful. Let me write down the word because I know there's a lot of vocabulary is needed. Right? So tautology. And we're going to encounter many more. They are very useful. Right? So I hope that this video It's a short video, but I hope that this was useful to you, these exercises. In our next video, we have to discuss quantifiers. And that's when we're going to make use of the upside down, this upside down A symbol that we talked about, and the E that looks in reverse and all that, so that we can start to construct, analyze mathematical statements. Thank you all, and as I always say, please continue to help me. Please continue to subscribe. I am immensely grateful, eternally grateful to all of you who leave the wonderful, positive comments. This channel is growing so much. It really is becoming one of the biggest channels out there, little by little, because quality things take a while to build, right? We don't build a wonderful mansion in a day, right? And already there's a lot of videos out there that are terrible. There's a lot of math channels. So I don't even call them math. They're so-called math channels, and all they do it's frivolous. They don't actually go through. And as I said before, if you're interested in that, you can always watch Khan Academy or their sympathizers. There's a lot of those out there. And if that's what you want, that's what you want. Maybe you just want sound bites and shallow understanding of things, and you just want to solve a problem. But this channel is not for that. This channel is not. I mean, we solve problems too, obviously, but we are more about fostering proper mathematical thinking, and also proper morals, proper manners, proper ways of doing things. So thank you all. I take I have a very high level of responsibility because I know I'm talking to a lot of young people, and I would like to serve as an example to you all. So I always must be, we should all be always, especially if you're an adult and you're watching this, you should always be on your best behavior with young people. You should be on your best behavior on an individual basis as well. There's no excuse for profanity. There's no excuse for obscene gestures. There's no excuse for, there's a word that we used to use back in the day, and it's lost its power. Lascivious. The word lascivious. A lot of people they don't even know what it means because a lot of people don't even read anymore. So their vocabulary has shrunk. All you hear on television is profanity. I praise God every day. I do not have a television set, and nor do I play. Well, I do have one that is from the 1980s. It's a box television set, and I use it to watch. If I have to watch a VHS from back in the day that I still cherish and keep. But if you tune on to the radio today, you turn on the TV, the channel, it's all profanity. Even the major news networks are allowing profanity. You should see some of the commercials out there. The most disgusting and just absolutely reprehensible commercials are out there. There's one now. I didn't even want to talk about it, but there's one where they have it's supposed to, I don't even want to mention it, but it has something to do with personal hygiene. The language that lady's using is just absolutely disgusting for a lady. It would be disgusting for a man as well, but even more so for her. All right. Thank you, everyone.